What's up, everybody? This is Alex from Fireside Giants and Empire Sports Media Production, and you're listening to the Fireside Giants podcast. If you're a diehard Giants fan, you've come to the right place. Daily episodes, interviews, draft content, and so much more coming up. Make sure to drop a like and a subscription below on YouTube. And don't forget to leave a comment. We love to engage with everybody. Part of the reason why we do this, the community building. So really appreciate that as well. As always, in today's episode, we want to talk about a couple different things. First of all, the Giants hired a new tight ends coach. We want to discuss him for a moment. And then we want to jump into why the Giants should heavily be considering trading back in the draft class. Joe Schoen, during his introductory press conference, made it pretty apparent they will be considering all opportunities and motives, and ultimately trading back offers a potentially lucrative haul. And I think that there are multiple reasons why you would do it, ranging from getting draft capital in case Daniel Jones doesn't pan out, or just increasing your draft capital for this class. This is the first one after COVID where they have in-person, availabilities, right? The Giants were able to go to the Senior Bowl. They were able to do all these things. Last year was all virtual, Zoom calls, no in-person training sessions. So this year they'll have a lot more hands-on. And I think that will give them a lot more opportunity to find great prospects who will fit our culture and what we're trying to build here. But before we dive into all that good stuff, Anthony, how you doing today, my friend?
I'm doing great. And my favorite part of this conversation is going to be the trading down discussion, right? Because I remember we had that discussion extensively last offseason. The Giants should trade down. The Giants should trade down. Then they finally did it. Dave Gettleman shocked the world, did what he never did, and finally traded down. And maybe the draft pick wasn't what everybody wanted it to be after 1 year, right? Kadarius Toney was injured a lot. He struggled. But we always know the draft is a long-term approach, right? You're not drafting for the upcoming season. You're drafting for the seasons down the road. So trading down is great because now look at the position the Giants are in. They might trade down again and get a real king's ransom, and they have 2 first-round picks to trade away, or trade one of those away, keep the other one, still have your first-round pick, and maybe get another one next year. And they could just keep doing this over and over and over again. And it's really great and really exciting. I love that the Giants are set up in this great position. Like, if there's one thing that we can give Dave Gettleman credit for, I mean, we hate Dave Gettleman. We're so glad that he's gone. But I'll give him credit for that. He did set the Giants up for a pretty good position after he left, and I think that we can be happy about that, at least in draft capital. Because about everything else, he really did not set us up in a good position. But with draft capital, that was good. And I do trust Joe Schoen to step in here and make the right decisions with those draft picks, whether that be sticking and picking or trading down and getting another king's ransom.
Yeah, absolutely. And for the record, I think Joe Judge had a lot to say in trading back. When he came here, the entire draft strategy for the Giants shifted tremendously, right? Right off the bat, they go out and they get Andrew Thomas, the first time Dave Gettleman has ever spent a first-round pick on a lineman. That isn't a defensive interior guy, which is ridiculous. But then you look at the second year and you see the Giants trade back. The first time Dave Gettleman's ever traded back in his career, at least in the first round. I think it was in all rounds, but I'm not totally sure about that one. But you see the change in strategy. Joe Judge obviously had a say in that. And I think that, for the record, I actually think that Joe Judge was a decent drafter. I think that the players that we got the last 2 years and the value we got was pretty good. I think Aaron Robinson's going to be a good corner. Xavier McKinney, stud safety. He's going to be a Pro Bowl safety, maybe an All-Pro in later on in his career. You look at Azeez Ojulari, double-digit sacks. Andrew Thomas, a bookend left tackle. The first 2 years of that draft, the 2 years that Joe Judge had under his belt, I thought we got some pretty decent players for the most part. So, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that we did pretty well. I'm hoping we do even better now under Joe Schoen and Brian Daboll. But to start off this episode, I don't want to talk about the draft. I want to talk about the new tight ends coach for the Giants, Andy Bischoff, who's coming over from the Houston Texans under David Culley this past year. And he worked with the Baltimore Ravens for pretty much the entire rise of Mark Andrews. He was the primary tight ends coach who helped develop Mark Andrews, who is arguably the best tight end in football. He's neck and neck with Travis Kelce. You can be the decider for those two. But when you look at what he's done, the Giants are getting a damn good coach, right? We had Freddie Kitchens last year, who then elevated to the offensive coordinator spot. Freddie Kitchens, I don't think that we really got to see what he was capable of doing with those tight ends. Because Jason Garrett's offensive scheme was just so poor, and Freddie Kitchens' scheme was arguably the same, just because we didn't have Daniel Jones, we didn't have no offensive line. How is Evan Ingram supposed to run a seam route when Daniel Jones has no time in the pocket? They pretty much needed those tight ends to be blocking at all times, because otherwise DJ was going to be on his butt in a matter of milliseconds. So what I think Andy Bischoff can do for us, because he has the experience developing quality tight ends, you come in here and you let him have a mid-round pick. Give him a mid-round pick. Who do you want for us to develop at tight end? What is the player that you ideally would like to have? Give us 3 tight ends. We'll target those guys in the mid rounds. You'll have one of those guys to develop and really make your protege for all intents and purposes. So the guy I have in mind personally is Jeremy Ruckert from Ohio State. I really like Jeremy Ruckert. If you watch him play, high motor, high intensity, and if you have any other guys that you have in mind in the comment section on YouTube, make sure to drop those below. I'd love to hear any other names that we can take a look at during the offseason. But Jeremy Ruckert really stands out to me. He's a willing blocker. He's a great pass catcher. He was really overshadowed by Chris Olave and a pretty potent Ohio State offense. But I think that for the most part, him going to the NFL, he's going to be a guy who you can rely on to develop really nicely as a blocker. He's already a good receiver. He's a big body. He can break tackles. He can churn extra yards out for first downs. He reminds me a lot of Mark Andrews actually as a rookie. So he reminds me of the type of body he has in terms of the underrated athleticism he has for a bigger kind of guy at tight end. He's a very, very high motor. Mark Andrews is a very similar player. I would love to get him in the early 3rd round, maybe bottom of the 2nd round if you traded up. We have a lot of picks, so we can, get your guy if you want him. But I think that Andy Bischoff and Jeremy Ruckert would be a really good pairing to develop alongside Daniel Jones at quarterback or whatever quarterback we have for the future. Hopefully it's DJ and he pans out. But Anthony, when you're looking at Bischoff, what do you see in him? Do you like the experience? I imagine definitely has a lot of knowledge under his belt, but I think that he's a good hire for this Giants team.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think he's got great experience. He's been with multiple teams, and he's had pretty good success with multiple teams. He left the Ravens after a few really solid years there as an offensive assistant. He was a quality control coach, meaning he did more than just coach the tight ends. He's actually got experience coaching other positions on the offensive side of the ball as well. But then he was focused on the tight ends. They drafted Mark Andrews, needed a good tight ends coach, and Bischoff went in there and did a phenomenal job. I mean, Mark Andrews is definitely top 3 to 5 tight end in the NFL, and if he's getting a lot of the credit for Mark Andrews' development, then I really like this hiring, and I think it's really good. And then, of course, you're mentioning Jeremy Ruckert. I like him a lot. I've done a lot of mock drafts, low key, here and there lately as we're gearing up towards the draft, getting really excited for it. I'm taking a tight end in the middle rounds every single time. I think the Giants need to. I don't think Evan Engram is going to be on this team this upcoming season. If he is, I still don't trust that at all. I definitely want to draft a tight end, one with the skill set that's more similar to the one that Daniel Jones likes to play with, because it just seems like him and Evan Engram in the past year just have not clicked, not since their rookie season, right? Since Daniel Jones's rookie season. Then when he was a rookie, I mean, him and Evan Engram were connecting on the deep balls. They were making explosive plays, but ever since Jason Garrett got to town, not so much. I mean, Jason Garrett just so poorly misused Evan Engram, and I feel like, unfortunately, Evan Engram's been misused throughout his entire career in the NFL, and that's really sad to say, but now it might be time for the Giants to let him go elsewhere, get a clean slate, and hopefully have a promising career with another team, while the Giants go ahead, take a middle round tight end. Most tight ends that are good in this NFL are found in the middle rounds. There really aren't that many first round tight end prospects that are like good. Like I can't even, Kyle Pitts, yeah, sure, but even though he was so excellent as a rookie, being a first round pick, he still didn't really have that great of a value because he was just a tight end. So that's why you got to take them. Pat Fryermuth is a great pick, right? But was he early 2nd round? I think that he was early 2nd round.
Yeah, he was early 2nd. He was selected right where he was supposed to be selected, but he did well for the Pittsburgh Steelers this past year. I really like him.
Yeah, and credit to you. You had a really great early evaluation. You said that he was going to be good really early on, but Jeremy Ruckert, man, I'll say I do really like him. There's another tight end, I think, coming out of Iowa. Blanking on his name right now, my bad, but there are some really good middle round tight ends here. And knowing Joe Schoen,
Weidermeyer,
I would probably, yeah, I think that sounds familiar. But knowing Joe Schoen, I know that he likes to draft tight ends in the middle round. So we're talking about Mark Andrews, who was a middle round pick for the Ravens and was developed by Andy Bischoff. But now we can also discuss Dawson Knox, who was a middle round pick, drafted by Joe Schoen and the Buffalo Bills, developed into one of the best tight ends in the NFL in just a short couple of years. So I like mid-round tight ends. That's where I want to go going forward. And I know that's where Joe Schoen is going to go going forward. Middle-round tight ends, let Andy Bischoff get his hands on them, hopefully develop them into a stud within the first 2 or 3 years of their career.
Yeah, so Weidermeyer's from Texas A&M, and the guy you're thinking of is Charlie Kolar. I've seen a lot of people mention him from Iowa State. Is that the guy you're talking about? There's Cole Turner from Nevada, Trey McBride from Colorado State, Cade Otton from Washington. Yeah, so I've seen Kolar's name come up. 260 pounds, 6'6", pretty good guy. He's the 7th ranked tight end, so he's definitely a mid round guy, right? He's 126th ranked, but Jeremy Ruckert's 78th, so he's probably going to be early 3rd round. selection, maybe mid-third round. So I would see him if he was there. I'd take a gander, take a flyer at least. But I feel confident he'll be a good player for us if under the right coaching. And it seems like the Giants are putting together a pretty good offensive coaching staff up to this point. Mike Kafka, Brian Dable, Andy Bischoff. I think there was another running backs coach they were trying to poach from Notre Dame. They were going to make this guy Deland, I think his name was. They were going to make him the highest paid running back coach in football. And apparently he was like, no, I want to stay with Notre Dame because I want to be the head coach there. So he wants that opportunity. And, it is what it is. So Giants will be looking elsewhere. Maybe they keep Burton Burns. Who knows? But what I have to say about the draft, right? So we're kind of, tiptoeing on the draft right now, talking about the tight ends and the prospects. But I want to talk about the 5th and 7th overall picks, right? A lot of people want double offensive linemen. Now, from a straight up value perspective, you don't want to take 2 offensive linemen with your 5th and 7th overall picks, right? You need to give love to other portions of the team. You have to trust your coaching staff to put together a decent offensive line and have the coaching give them the opportunity to succeed. The Giants will have some new talent on the board, right? They'll have some new talent on the roster. Maybe they'll go out into free agency. They'll grab a guy. I know there's a couple of centers. Ben Jones, I actually really like as a potential center. He won't cost too much. He had a pretty good season this past year. And, when I think about what the Giants should do at 5 and 7, trading back makes the most sense, right? Why does it make the most sense? If you can add more value and more draft capital for this year or next year, you have more chances to hit on great talent. Now, with this is kind of a weird draft class, right? A lot of people are coming to the conclusion that a number of guys could go in the top 10. They keep dropping, getting higher, getting low. Malik Willis is crazy climbing through the draft boards right now. A lot of people are falling in love with him. Kenny Pickett had a great Senior Bowl. He's another guy that can go in top 10. Kayvon Thibodeau, Todd McShay comes out and says, hey, Kayvon Thibodeau has a poor motor. He has a poor work ethic. And people are saying, oh, crap, maybe he could drop to 5 or 7 for the Giants. These guys are dropping and falling. Stingley, the cornerback, a lot of people are saying he might drop now. There's different corners that actually could be better than him. Last year, we saw an early run on cornerbacks. Who knows? There's so many players that will go up and down. Their stock will rise and fall, especially with the combine coming up as well. So what we have to say about the Giants right now is that there could be guys that could fall out of the top 10 that are actually top 10 value picks, right? Like think about Azeez Ojulari. People were mocking him in the top 15 to us a week before the draft, and we got him at 51, right? 51, 52. So that is a tremendous value grab, Kadarius Toney, if he can kind of stay uninjured, if he can alleviate those problems, he's a top 15 pick in terms of value. So it really depends on your evaluations. It depends on how your scouting reports go, but I think the Giants trading back in this class, if they can trade back to the 15 range, the 10 to 15 range, get some more draft capital, even for later on, maybe they pick up another 2nd round pick along the way. You're talking about another starting offensive lineman. A 2nd round pick is a starting guard in the NFL. A 2nd round pick is a starting safety. Look at Xavier McKinney. A 2nd round pick is a starting interior defensive lineman. This draft class is one of the deepest interior defensive lineman classes in recent memory. So now, Dave Gettleman would have spent the 5th overall pick on one of them, but Joe Shane may say, let's spend a mid-2nd round pick on one of them and plug that gap next to Dexter Lawrence for the long term. But because there is so many differing valuations and so many differing players that are rising and falling all the time and different reports coming out, you can trade back feeling pretty good about yourself that you can get a great player. Another guy, Trevor Panning from Northern Iowa, same school as Ellerson Smith. Maybe Smith has some insight on him. I'm looking at Trevor Panning as maybe a guy who just climbed into the top of the 1st round. He looks great at the Senior Bowl. Maybe he's there in the 2nd round. You get him with your first, you get him with the 5th. Well, I think the Giants have the 37th pick there in the 2nd round. Maybe he's still there. You grab Trevor Panning. There's a lot of really great prospects in this draft class, Anthony. With that being the case, it makes the logic of trading back that much more enticing. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I love the idea of trading back. And I think one of the main things you said is you're not really getting the best value out of your draft picks if you're taking an offensive lineman with the 5th and the 7th overall pick. And here's why I think that's actually true. Because the Giants don't need 2 offensive tackles. You don't take offensive linemen like guards in the top 10 picks unless they're superstars, like they're studs, Quentin Nelson, right? Like that kind of prospect. They're going to be excellent. But if the Giants say with the 5th overall pick, they go ahead and they draft an offensive tackle. They get the right tackle opposite of Andrew Thomas, set up for the next 5 years or so, right? Perfect. Now with the 7th overall pick, are you really just going to take an offensive guard right there at number 7? Or are you going to trade down one of those picks and take that guard that's of much better value with the 15th or 25th overall pick. Because even as great as Tyler Linderbaum is, and I've said that I really love Tyler Linderbaum, I think that he's amazing, the Giants should trade down if they want to take him. That's just, at the end of the day, that's how you extract value in all of your draft picks. You trade down and get them where their value meets the talent level, right? If they're not evaluated by the rest of the NFL as a top 10 pick, then you cannot evaluate them as a top 10 pick and take them there, because we've seen how that goes, right? Take a look at the Las Vegas Raiders when they drafted Cleveland Farrell with the 4th overall pick, an edge rusher that was supposed to be a top 25 pick, not a top 5 pick. They took him way too freaking early, and it didn't pan out. Not at all. Expectations were way too high for him when he came in. He never had the talent level to reach that valuation that they selected him at with a top 5 pick. He just was not that player. And then they tried to make him that player, and it did not pan out. So that's just one of many, many examples. Another example is actually Eli Apple. He was never supposed to be a top 10 pick, right? I mean, now he's on 3 or 4 different teams in his career. Sure. Shout out to him. Respect. He's in the Super Bowl. Screw that guy. I hope Odell Beckham Jr. scores 3 touchdowns on him this next Sunday. But needless to say, I think you guys all understand what I'm saying. You do have to trade down if you want to get the most value out of your draft picks. And I really like trading down. Listen, if the Giants were in position to get Kayvon Thibodeau with one of those picks and then an elite offensive tackle with the other pick, then you probably stick and pick. You take Kayvon Thibodeau because he was at one point regarded to be the number 1 overall pick in this draft, and now he's sliding. If he falls to 5, maybe you just snag him there. And then at 7, let's say Evan Neal somehow falls to 7. Okay, that's a situation where you're like, all right, both of these guys at one point were considered for number 1 overall picks, and now they're both in my laps. So now I want to take both of them here, stick and pick. But that's not very likely. Likelihood is those elite prospects are taken. The Giants get a good offensive tackle with their first round pick, and then they trade the other one, trade down, and then get a really solid contributor somewhere else on the roster with the other first round pick. And I do think that's the way that they should do it to extract the most value out of their respective draft position and out of the players playing the positions that they're selecting.
Right. And there are 4 players that I have in mind who I'm not trading down for, right? The 4 players are Aiden Hutchinson, which if he fell would be a freaking godsend. Kayvon Thibodeau, I'm not trading down. I'm going to take him. Evan Neal and Ikem Ekwonu. Those are the 4 players that I would stick and pick. I'm not going to trade down. However, any other players, if Stingley or Hamilton or Charles Cross, if any of those guys are there and someone, or a quarterback, Kenny Pickett, whoever, and someone's like, hey, we want to trade up. And for the record, I think obviously the 5th overall pick is the one that will get you more value from trading back. But I believe that Ekwonu or Neal will be there, right? One of those 2 top offensive tackles will be, then the Giants will take the best one. Now, 7th overall pick, you move back, man. There's a ton of teams that need a quarterback. And like I said, Kenny Pickett, Malik Willis, Matt Corral, there's a ton of quarterbacks that are getting a lot of hype. And there's always a team that's willing to go up and get their guy, because when it comes to a quarterback, teams don't want to run the risk of losing out on the guy that they want. So, looking at the Saints, looking at, even Tampa Bay, do they trust Kyle Trask? Who knows? Maybe they trade back and the Giants go all the way back to what? Like they go to the 28th pick and they get a 1st round pick. They get this year's 2nd round pick and like a 3rd and a 4th round pick. They could freaking just take from Tampa Bay. You get a later pick, but you get Trevor Penning maybe from it. And there's this draft class is really, really deep with edge rushers as well. So you can really walk away with some good talent at the end of the 1st round. So don't count that out as well. But Washington, they need a quarterback. They're not going with Taylor Heineke. Even the Texans, maybe the Texans want a quarterback, but they're in a position to get one. So, Seattle, what happens to Russell Wilson? Maybe they want to trade up and get a quarterback. There's so many avenues that this could go, as you can see. And the other reason that trading down makes a lot of sense is because you need insurance for Daniel Jones, right? I want Daniel Jones to pan out as much as anybody else, right? Everybody says we want Daniel Jones to pan out. A lot of people are down on him. A lot of people still want to give him a chance under a new leadership. But the reality is that Daniel Jones is unproven. We don't know if the offensive line is going to be good enough to give him the time. We don't know if the coaching is going to be able to put together a really competent scheme in year 1. We're assuming these things, but we don't know it for a fact. So with that being the case, you want to put insurance policy on Daniel Jones. get draft capital for 2023 by trading back. You can always get a little bit more value by pushing it to the next year. So the Giants trade back with the Saints. They trade back with whatever team. They get a first round pick for next year, and they say, okay, we now have the insurance we need to go and say, we're going to give up the farm for Bryce Young. We're going to go up and get CJ Stroud or whatever it might be, whatever quarterback the Giants want. They have the insurance policy. Or if they want to trade for a guy like Russell Wilson midseason, and he sticks with the Seattle Seahawks, you have 2 first-round picks at your disposal. Say, okay, our team looks really good. Now we just need the last piece, and that's the quarterback. It could be a variety of things. I'm just making stuff up. But ultimately, I think that really gives the Giants a lot of leverage because they put themselves in a position where they don't have to sell the farm, a first round pick this year, a first round pick next year, and the year after that to get your quarterback. You already have those 2 first round picks that are yours, and you made the most of the capital you have now. You don't have to give up any more capital. You're adding it from what you have. So I think it's always a positive, right? It's always a positive when you can trade back and get more picks out of what you have currently instead of giving up picks in the future. And then you're stuck with like the Bears right now. And you don't have a first round pick and you're like, shit, what am I going to do? Who are we going to take in the second round? This team has a lot of holes like they just went over a whole overhaul in their coaching staff and they don't have a first round pick. That's why it wasn't probably as attractive as the Giants who have money problems, right? But you can fix money problems in one off season. You can fix those problems. Draft picks, you can't fix. You can't get draft picks. Well, from you can't buy draft picks unless it's compensatory or whatever. So ultimately, the Giants, I think, are in a good place to maximize on their value. And as I said before, Joe Schoen is going to find the best opportunity for us to capitalize. But Anthony, any last thoughts on trading up or any of the things I mentioned?
I mean, I think we're in agreement. Trading down sounds like a very enticing option. It sounds like a great possibility. And from what I'm hearing, the Giants are having some slight discussions here and there about doing it already at the Senior Bowl. That's really early on for them to already be considering this. But if you remember last year, this is when we started to hear about it, right? When the Giants made that trade down last year from 11 to 20, we started to hear about them shopping that pick at around the Senior Bowl and then the Combine. That's when it really started to heat up. And then, of course, they made the deal on draft day before the Giants to already be thinking about doing this, to already be out there with Joe Schoen as a new general manager, having conversations with people and maybe looking to shop that pick already means there's a pretty strong likelihood that they will end up trading down, extracting as much value as possible, maybe getting an extra first round pick for next year's draft. Maybe they're thinking to themselves, Daniel Jones, I really like him. I want to see how he does this year, but maybe next year I want to go after a quarterback, right? Maybe that's in their heads. So maybe they want to get a first round pick for next year. Maybe they're even thinking, hey, there's some really good quarterbacks in the second round of this year's draft. I want to trade down and get an additional second round pick this year and maybe take a flyer on one of those quarterbacks, try and get a Derek Carr situation, right? That's always a possibility as well if they're thinking about the quarterback position. If they're not thinking about the quarterback position, it's still smart to trade down because look at all the holes on this roster, right? They could use new defensive linemen. They could use new linebackers, corners, safeties. That's every level of the defense right there. They could use new offensive linemen, a new tight end, probably an extra receiver. Sterling Shepard's likely on his way out. They might have to get a new running back in the middle rounds if they do end up trading Saquon Barkley, which I saw today ESPN was indicating they might. And they also might need a quarterback. So they've got a lot of holes on this roster. They got a whole lot of job. This is a big job for Joe Schoen. He's got a whole lot of work to do. He's got to get it done, and trading down is just going to make it a lot easier for him. How I just explained all that, all the holes on the roster, how big of a job this is, that's what the Indianapolis Colts had in 2018. Now this year, Pro Bowl is today, guys. Guess which team has the most Pro Bowlers playing today? The Indianapolis Colts. Why is that? Because they traded down in 2018 when the Giants stick and picked and took a running back at number 2. The Colts ended up trading down, getting a king's ransom, and rebuilding their roster from the ground up. So this is the year. Joe Schoen stepping in, knows what he has to do, and I think that he will end up trading down this year's draft.
Right. I mean, look, the reality is simple. The Giants have no money. The Giants have no money, guys. When you have no money, your best bet at rebuilding a roster is through the draft. So obviously you want more opportunities to hit on players. If you're going to put all this work in, all of this time, all of these evaluations to find out what the best prospects look like, you want to get a bunch of them. You want to get as many as you possibly can. And I trust Joe Schoen as an evaluator and Brian Dable as well. Joe Schoen had already gone through the first 4 rounds of draft prospects with the Bills. So they already went through it, and the Bills have been really good at drafting the last couple of years. So the evaluations that he's already done was in context with what the Bills are building, in context of what they needed to do. And they needed more offensive linemen. offensive line for the Bills was a big a necessity. So looking at that, they probably have a lot of great evaluations already on the offensive line side. And they were just trying to reboot, like just bolster more strengths and stuff like that. So the Giants is a little bit different of a scenario. They need to bolster a lot of different things, but I think that the Giants are in a good place. I think Joe Schoen has the right mentality, the right mindset. Add as much capital as you can, rebuild, because that is what it is, guys. It is a rebuild. This is going to take 2 to 3 years, but hopefully 3 years from now, we're talking about a playoff team that has the strengths the Bills currently have, and we're just trying to add more talent to it and not trying to supplement, terrible contracts and bad coaching. But I think that we're in a much better place than we were a couple months ago. But make sure to like and subscribe this video as always, my friends. Really appreciate all the love. Keep tuning in every single day. We got content coming out, whether it's rumors, whether it's coaching hires, whether it's anything. We got you guys covered, especially with draft content coming up. We'll have some interviews, of course, in the coming weeks. But hope you enjoy. Make sure to like and subscribe, as I mentioned before, and we'll catch you guys on the next Fireside Giants episode.
TVSO.